evening, everyone. We'll call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It's July 2nd, 7:05. I'd ask the Commission Secretary to call the roll, please.
Greg Michelle.
Here.
Jason Whiteman.
Here.
Ron Haza. Joe Edmond.
Here.
Richard Hawk. Here. Jeff Wade.
Here.
Mike McLaughlin.
Here.
Mario Rios.
Here.
Ernest Cruz.
Here.
Ms. Cruz is here for staff, and
Alex Blue.
Alex Blue from council. We don't have any citizens to be heard this evening, so I'll turn it over to Councilman Blue for the liaison report and update on the items from last month's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see from your agenda, there were two items that were previously before Planning and Zoning Commission, which then found their way to the City Council. The first item listed was a request by Carlos Miranda for approval of the wall signage, essentially moving the sign down the building 2 or 3. Planning and Zoning recommended to allow it. Council unanimously approved the same amount, so no change there. With regard to the second item, this was a request for C5 Helotes. You may recall this was the Service First Auto Repair Center to be located on the lot next to the BBVA Compass Bank. The commission recommended a number of reduction in signage. The City Council concurred completely with that recommendation, added one additional restriction, and that is to require the developer to not put the dog park area, the dog enclosure area along Bandera or Houseman Road. But if for safety issues, they recommended that if they want to have it, that it needs to be along the backside or the other adjoining property line. So that was an additional restriction that was placed on it by council.
Alex.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, please, Richard.
Did you bring up the fact that we had discussed that?
Yes, and,
Okay.
and that no resolution had been made at Planning and Zoning other
Right.
than
But we
to
did
allow
discuss
it. But council members, several council members had a big problem with it. 1 or 2 were okay, but in the end, the mayor also indicated that once the original presentation came in, the mayor had recommended that they not place it right up at the street. The city administrator discussed it with him as part of staff, and they proposed it anyway. They also indicated that the signage was excessive when they first presented it, and the developer ignored those recommendations as well as then came forward with what they were wanting. But the Planning and Zoning, I think a number of the members of the council had viewed the Planning and Zoning meeting and appreciated the diligence in which you went through the agenda item and looking at all of the different signs. So it was, well, the Planning and Zoning review was well, saved a lot of council time because it was a lot of concurring with the opinions that was there.
Good. Any other questions for Alex? Alex, was there any feedback from the developer about their plans given the sign discussion? Was that part of the conversation?
Let me say this way. When the vote by council was unanimous to concur with Planning and Zoning, the developer walked out of the room.
And other...
That's feedback, then we'll leave it at that.
The other item, did that prompt any discussion about the issue that had percolated here earlier that Commissioner Haza had brought up regarding wall signage for smaller size store retail fronts?
No, that was not a part of any conversation.
Okay. Okay,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions? Okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
All right, our next item tonight is approval of the minutes, or discussion and action on the minutes, hopefully to approve from the regular meeting that we held on June 4th, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a correction.
Yes.
Mike McLaughlin has informed me that he wasn't here.
Okay, so we will make note of
You can
that.
leave me in there if you want, I'll take that.
No, you're out.
Extra pay.
Yeah, no extra pay. It didn't account for my retirement time.
Okay, I will make sure that that is included.
And with that, I'll make a motion to accept.
Is there a second on the minutes? Mike seconded. So the motion is to approve the minutes on the June 4th meeting as presented with the change or the correction that Commissioner McLaughlin was not here. All in favor of the motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. Minutes are approved. Our next item tonight is discussion and action on preliminary and final replats pursuant to Chapter 78, Section 74, that's subdivisions replatting without vacating the previous plat, and associated variances. And those are from Sections 78.3, dedication of right-of-way by subdividers, and 78.136, lots, subparagraph C, frontage for Bandera Oak subdivision, 11.69 acre tract establishing lots 7, 8, and 901 out of previously platted lots 3, 4, 5, 6, and 901. Gather you gentlemen, are you guys here for the sign or for this particular item? For this item. You're this item, okay, so we very well may have some questions. Ernest, we did not get anything from staff summarizing the item. Was there anything that Rick or others on staff wanted to convey to us?
Nothing other than the variances that they're applying for. I believe one of the lots had a minimum lot width, if the frontage didn't meet the standards. and
Okay, so maybe we can, if you could put up the one image that had all the lots on it. I think maybe it'd helpful to us if one of you gentlemen would present the overview for us. And if you would start by giving us just your name and business address for the record.
Armando Niebla with KFW Engineers. You need a business address? 3421 Paisanos Parkway,
And
San
I didn't
Antonio,
catch,
Texas.
what was your name? Sorry.
Armando Niebla.
Armando, thank you. Okay, so we'll try to get up an image here that maybe you, and feel free to walk over to that if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Is that a good one to work with, or you want the one without the handwriting?
Well, that's the record, that page, if you would actually scroll down to the bottom, that next page, that's the original recorded plat.
Okay.
And this was done with the intent of a development on Lot 5 that didn't come to life on that project.
And lot 5.
Being
eh,
the
Go over,
follow-up.
just so everybody's oriented on the same one. Yep,
Was originally planned for a different tenant that fell through. And so what ended up happening was the development of the retail that's out there front today. And so this plat is just, or this replat is just really to follow what is currently constructed out there. It does not include lots 3 and 4, which are the wash tub and the KFC property.
Those are-
So this replat excludes that. And it's just the re-subdividing of really Lot 5 and Lot 6, and then the 901 lot.
the 901, would you mind pointing out the 901 lot? I can't see it from here.
901 lot is this large triangular kind of piece that's in the back. And that currently houses the sensitive feature that's on the property, as well as the detention and the water quality that were planned for the entire development.
Okay, so,
So if you want to roll to the proposed replat, it's up a couple of
Past it.
pages. And we can leave that one on there with the notes, is fine. But Lot 8 now, or Lot 5, becomes essentially Lot 8, which is where the current retail resides. The balance of that then becomes another larger lot with some component of 901 coming off of it. Still providing all the buffering requirements and setbacks, building setbacks relative to zoning. The variances that are being requested are the same variances that were originally approved with the original plat, which are the width of what was previously, I can't remember, I think it was Lot 6. This lot was part of this component, so that width stays the same, that's where the existing access drive is. So that becomes part of Lot 901, which will always remain as an access drive / utility easement, as now part of the detention and the water quality. So kind of all the access utilities, public utilities, and detention and water quality will essentially be on one lot. The balance being then 2 remainder lots.
so 901, the original 901, which as you described, it had the detention and the other sensitive features, those remain on the now smaller 901 as
Correct.
well, right?
That is
So
correct.
901 continues to house that.
Correct. And that detention and water quality that's out there was designed for ultimate development of the subdivision, so that's not changing. It's designed to treat both the water and detain the water for storm events.
Okay, I'd open it up for comment or question here. Start with
Chairman?
Ron.
When we originally did the first plot, they had, on the 901, they had all that green space as a buffer between there and the neighborhood. I see, now we have cut off a lot of that. And for some reason, I thought there were some sensitive areas over there, or was that just buffer the way they cut the old one?
There were no sensitive features in that extra piece that's been, is now proposed to be occupied by Lot 7. There are no sensitive features out there. Are not in that area. The only one that's of record is what's defined as the sensitive feature with that delta or diamond 2 keynote, which refer to the solution feature on the property, and it's actually defined. It's defined up top.
Okay.
But the variance request regarding the easement has to do with the frontage down there on Bandera.
Correct.
But that's the same, that hasn't changed.
Correct.
That's the same well,
It's the same width. It was previously part of Lot 6, which now becomes part of Lot 901. What we're trying to do is identify all the access utility areas and the detention and water quality features as being a 901 lot, meaning they're not going to put building structures on them.
Okay.
They're only going to be used for access and utility areas and detention and water quality.
so the rest of 6 is basically now 7.
Correct.
Is basically what it is.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Armando, the Lot 7 is going to be it's not used at this time, is that correct?
Correct.
But for future possibilities, is that the purpose?
Yeah, for commercial. It separates and respects more of what's out there. What's out there now is a really large lot for a small retail component in the front.
Right.
And to traditional standards, it would have been replatted that way or done that way day one. But I think where the plat was at that time and what retail and all that was going on, so much was changing with the tenants that we went ahead and had to finish that previous plat.
Okay.
So we're just now trying to kind of align the lots to match what's out there.
So Lot 7 will live in its way, but 901 is the key lot that you're describing?
That kind of pieces it all together
Right.
as access. Being that Lot 7 doesn't have street frontage, it will by way of Lot 901 because it's always going to remain as an access drive.
Yes. And I mean, I need to ask this question, but this is the only way in and out, that current access, correct?
Correct.
Leads into 901?
It's the only approved driveway that TxDOT would give us.
And when you were looking at this replat, had you considered from any feedback from the current tenants that possibly said that it's working, the in and out flow for the businesses, because they're all kind of in proximity, they're kind of close to one another, and I know that there can be some congestion between the Kentucky Fried Chicken and the wash tub. There's a lot of cars that are kind of like, there's no really set pattern for them to come in and out. Was that addressed in any way, or is this just, we're looking at the technicalities of this at this time?
We're not aware of any circulation or traffic issues. We're solely looking at it respective to lot lines, and traffic really isn't a part of that when it comes to just how we subdivide. Being that that's our only access point, and it's an approved driveway package, no further discussion or anything's been had on it.
Thank you, Armando.
I have one question.
Joe,
Excuse me. The back of that lot, you said it's going to be just used for a buffer?
The back of which lot, 901 or lot 7?
One at the top,
Lot 7?
yeah.
Well, anything that is proposed on lot 7 will comply with
What I
whatever
was going to
city
ask you is,
ordinances.
what's the nearest resident to that lot line, do you know?
I'm sorry?
What is the nearest resident to that lot line, do you know?
Yes, there's 7 lots that back lot 7, which was
They bump up to lot 7,
correct.
so you say roughly 50 feet, 40 feet from the resident to lot 7?
No, they share, if, Ernest, if you, do you have control of the screen?
What do you need to go, I'm sorry?
Can you pan it down just so I can point to it? Actually, go back up to that other one. Go back. Just right here. So this is lot 7. This is the boundary of the
Right.
overall property, and that overall boundary touches those residential
I
lots.
understand. And I was just wondering, what is the nearest distance from your property line to the nearest resident? You have any idea?
They
Yes.
Oh, that I don't know. On the residence, on site, I don't know on the residence side. I mean, they share a common lot line, but I don't know how far the houses are set back.
Okay.
But any development on Lot 7 will comply with the codes relative to building setbacks and landscape ordinance, et cetera. We're not proposing anything of that nature at this time. We're just trying to replat the lot lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a 30-foot building setback on defined on
I'm just concerned
here.
that later on there's some kind of a business that has a band playing or whatever, you know, so close to the property, but that's later than now.
Yes, yeah. Anything proposed there will have to comply with the
Right now, you're
city
proposing
ordinance.
to leave it vacant.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe to tag on with what Joe was talking about, on the before view, the property line was further into the property for what's now Lot 7, I believe. For what used to be 901, it was further in, so based on Lot 901 being undeveloped, the residents could enjoy a wider setback just because of that. Now, the setback is closer because of the setback line, which, yes, it's ordinance. But because you want to replat it, those residences have lost that extra cushion, if you will.
Right.
By doing so, and I think that's what he was alluding to. In a way, it is what it is, but then again, I do have concerns over that. Because it kind of opens up, getting really close to the residences, which, yeah, by code you can do. But like, as I said, you can enjoy the extra distance because of the property line.
Yes.
So could you maybe speak to that, or, I know that's not part of it, but I see that train coming, right?
Sure. The most that I could really say is that, I mean, we've got the what is that, this is B1 zoning, adjoining the residence, so any zoning restrictions relative to setbacks and landscape ordinances, et cetera, will have to be complied with, whether that's part of 7 or 901, and if they put drives, because you can still pave technically on lot 901 if you really wanted to. And so I think any development proposed in there would have to be cognizant of complying with the ordinance and not doing anything more.
But you see my point, you see where we're going with it.
I understand.
I do have a concern with that.
Yeah.
Others? Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Ernest, I'm trying to see, what is the distance for the driveway that I see they're asking for it's listed here as 60, and I see it's 60 here. What is the variance they're looking for on that?
Actually, the minimum is 60, right, for commercial? And the lot, frontage is less than that, correct?
It's currently proposed to be 60. Thought it was larger than that. I can't read this version.
Well, that's what
It's
I'm looking,
60.
it says 60. That's why I was wondering what the variance was.
I think it was the same variance that was applied for previously. Forgive me, but I don't remember what that
Right, that's what I was
requirement for that
confused.
frontage width is. I think it's in the
minimum is
supporting,
60 feet,
it's
I
on
think
the
it says
supporting.
50 on the drawing.
yeah, that's what it
It's
is.
50 on the drawing, then
Yeah.
that would be why the variance was submitted for, because it's 60 by code, but we're keeping the 50-foot frontage, which was previously approved with the original plat. It's the same variance request.
Because what I'm seeing on the drawing I'm looking at, what page did you see 50 on?
It's on both of the long sheet, both of them, front and back. You have to really squint.
Oh, yeah.
Carla, if you don't mind approaching,
Yeah,
take a look at what we're looking at here. why there might be a little confusion, so
Yeah, so that's shown to be 60.
what is this?
Well, it shows 60, and then the fine print looks like it's 50.
The 50 are the distances from pin to pin as you come into the
Got
property.
it, okay. I was
Oh,
thinking
so
it's
it's
wrong number.
tapering down? Oh, okay, that's what.
It's 60 foot at the extreme width. And the width.
Then it goes down to 50. Okay.
But then what is the variance?
Well, they need the variance for the 50.
50, okay,
Because the 60s.
okay. So it's just 60 at the mouth. Okay,
60 feet now,
yeah.
and it says here that rather than the code required 60 feet of frontage. So
But
what,
it's-
what is the
So the-
variance they're asking?
It's tapering. is
It's
how
not
we're
60
understanding
foot
it.
all the way through. It tapers down
narrows.
to it's considered a variable width because it
That's the
tapers.
issue.
This is 60 feet here, but once you get to these 2 points, it's 50 feet. Yeah.
But none of that is actually changing, correct?
None of
That
that is
itself,
changing.
that area is not changing.
None of that is
The only thing
changing.
that's changing is that line back. Yep.
The only thing we're changing are interior lot lines, that's correct.
TxDOT also, you might have seen, has a memo in here authorizing it or not objecting to it.
Right,
Their
and
language
that was, I think, mostly in part to the right-of-way dedication request.
Councilman Blue, please.
I want to just mention something for the record here. Ernest, if you could scroll down just a shade, you can see on the, no, the other way. On the upper left-hand side, you can see the original one before you change it. There is one additional change that is probably worth note in your motion, and that is that originally 901 had no Bandera Road frontage, right?
Correct?
But the lot in the back did have frontage.
6.
This new plat says now it flip-flops it. 901 has Bandera Road frontage through that driveway, but the lot in the back no longer has frontage. That too should be a variance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In
So-
terms
so-
of noting which lot has the,
Noting it as far as your recommendation, because if you look here, you'll see the original one,
Yeah.
901,
6 before.
was connected by the driveway, and this lot went back, right? Well, actually, 901 did not have a connection, but this lot went all the way around and had direct frontage. But on this one,
Yeah.
if you could scroll a little bit, Ernest,
Yes.
you'll notice that this new lot 7 has no frontage on Bandera Road.
Right.
That too is a variance that has to be granted.
For 901,
No, for 7.
No, for 7.
because 7 has no frontage.
Yes, the first approved plat had a variance for 901 because the detention pond had no Bandera Road frontage. It was a lot that had no frontage, but the other one did.
So it flips.
This is flip-flopping it. So now lot 7 has no frontage and 901 has that snaking around the frontage.
Are you,
Just to make it correct.
are you
Make
stating,
that
Hold on
note
one
as well,
second.
Because if you look at your original application, that is noted.
Yeah, there should have been 3 variances submitted. Ernest, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one for the right-of-way dedication, one for the lot frontage, and one for the width. There should have been 3 variance applications submitted.
So let's see if we have 3. I thought we had 2. Well, and variance request is specifically noting lot 7 with no direct frontage. So that
Correct.
needs to be part of it. And the rest of it is what? No right-of-way dedication and the
Width,
width of that is now lot
901.
901.
That's correct.
And the only purpose for that is because you guys want to keep utilities and rights of way on one lot.
Right, right. Maintaining that access drive for the use and benefit of all the lots.
Are you suggesting that even though the request only named 2 variances, that you want approval of 3?
Well, actually, I think it does, the application does mention 3 of them. This document that looks like this.
That's correct.
I was looking at this cover letter on the front.
I'm looking at the actual application.
To me, that one only lists 2 requests.
No right-of-way dedication, no frontage for lot 7. And what did we say the third was?
With,
Width, the variable lot.
That's not actually listed.
Well,
on
that's
this.
not actually listed on that one, is it?
There was the 2 on there.
It's on the other one. It's on the memo from
This says 2 on it.
Yeah.
Clearly,
from you guys, signed by you.
it's right.
Right, yeah, it's on there.
So we could ask, I mean, we could make our recommendation and fold into that a request for staff to follow up and ensure that all variances have been appropriately applied for and requested. And make that conditional. But when you put the 2 together, you have 3 separate variance requests. So again, to clarify, the first is that the lot 7 has no access, no front, no direct access. That lot 901 901 is the variable, is that the, that's the variable, the new variable easement one that is less than 60.
Correct.
And then the third is the no additional right-of-way dedication.
Right. And the removal of lot 6.
Mr. Chairman? I
Please.
just want to note that I'm in agreement with Commissioner McLaughlin that I would like to see this come back and with these same requested variances, but the plat of 901 somewhat remain the same, cutting across to the corner, leaving the neighborhood a little bit of buffer and green space. That's just my,
Okay?
yeah. And I don't know if we can convey that in a motion, or if we have to bring it back.
Well, you know, you're presented with something here, this is the request, right? I don't know. Michael?
Along the same lines, we are where we are presently. Things are, concrete's almost poured effectively on this. What is the feasibility of swinging that line around a little bit? Is there stuff planned for that land that would upset? And yeah, you can pass by code, we got it, it's legal. But it was a different configuration previously. And so now it's like, oh, wait a minute, now we're gonna bump up. Again, yeah, you can do it. But what's the feasibility of swinging that from 901, swinging around to the left a little bit?
I can't speak to what plans are in place or in action, because I
That's why I'm asking,
personally
is
don't
it
know.
would affect that. It's, yeah.
I'm sure that it would. But I'm not working on anything for Lot 7, but I don't know that there's
That's fine, yeah.
a transaction waiting on that could be certainly impacted because by right, they would still be complying with code everywhere else.
Yeah, it's my understanding, and maybe Ernest or Alex could correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody up here, I think that it's a very limited number of reasons why a replat can be, without vacating, can be objected to. You know, if it meets certain criteria.
Yeah,
If I'm mistaken about that, please tell me.
I think you're right.
But being that that is a concern up here, I mean, that can be conveyed through our liaison to council, who will make the final determination about this, on an issue that is apart from variance issues that we're considering here.
Mr. Chairman, if my memory serves me correctly, and it might not, I think that that was one of their reasonings for making 901 around that way, was to give that little bit of green space back to the
I kind of
neighborhood.
remember that too.
And having lot 6 be the weird shape it is, rather than going straight back. So, I mean, if memory serves me correctly, that was their original recommendation.
Well, you can, we can put up someone could propose a motion to propose that, or can propose rejecting what's been brought forward here and recommending disapproval for the reasons that you've stated. Either way, it goes to city council for a final determination in a week or so.
Mr. Chairman.
Mike?
Sir, I don't remember, were you part of the original platting of,
I came in on the tail end of that, so I don't know of any discussions, or we're not part of those discussions early on.
okay.
A question for Ernest is, Mr. Cruz, is this under a time constraint, or we need to meet a certain deadline to get this passed? Are we working with a time constraint, sir? Does this need to be worked by a certain deadline, or can this come back, or does it need to be?
Well, if it needs to come back, however, a recommendation, it would still need to go to city council anyway for final action, so with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, sir. I have the same feel that the commissioners have stated tonight. I feel the same way that, I mean, I think the variances are fine the way we're stating them, but adding the green space as it was initially intended should be addressed also in the motion. So if we're able to craft it in that way and move forward, then I would suggest that we go with that. And I'd be happy to start that, Mr. Chair, if you'd like.
Hold on just a moment. Keep waiting. Check out our, I don't want to make you keep standing there, so
No,
feel
no
free
problem.
to sit down. To review the ordinance. Yep, 78, 74. So, best I can tell, it doesn't speak to this at all, so best I can tell, you could craft the motion however you wish, though the applicant clearly has followed procedures. So, one can approve as submitted, essentially reject as submitted, or make a proposal.
Well, this is a recommendation.
It's a recommendation, right? Approve, recommend approval, or recommend disapproval as submitted. Or amend it or modify it in a manner similar to how people are expressing concern about.
Mr. Chairman, so I guess, just without the official vote, I guess that we have a consensus on everything else. it seems, other than that back piece.
Say that again?
It seems that from discussions, I'm detecting that we have a consensus on the other items on this.
On the variances, it seems
Variance
like,
on
yes,
this item,
it seems
yes.
that way. And so the point at which there may or may not be consensus is whether or not there should be a modification to
Right.
preserve the current, what is currently lot, what is that, 7? No, 6, I think it's 6.
Lot 901 is the one we're concerned with.
And
It's the existing, excuse me, it's the existing 901.
existing 901 and
They
existing
redid
7.
it,
Right.
901.
So you can craft it, put it in a motion. Council can then act on it.
Okay.
Process-wise, Alex, are you aware of any reason why that would not be permissible? As a recommendation?
I would think you could make a recommendation in any such fashion. As I recall, Greg, many, many years ago, when we went to that session, it's been, 15 years ago, when we went to that session at ACOG, there was something about a request for a plat has to be acted upon within a certain amount of time, either approved or denied, or it's automatically approved. I thought it was 60 days, but that would still allow one more month if need be. But I thought there was a requirement by state law that says that when a plat has been submitted properly, it has to be acted upon by the governing authority within a 60-day period, or it becomes automatic.
No, that is
So you
correct. I
can't
don't-
just not act and it'll happen.
That is correct, though. Does that apply to a situation that is essentially a replat as well as an initial plat?
Yeah, so what it
think
sounds
so.
like is even if the city council agrees with us and rejects it, it's still,
Well, it's rejected.
No, that's okay. That's action that is.
That's action.
well, it is, okay, it is an action, you're right, yes.
Jason,
Sorry.
what did you say? No, sorry. Well, why don't
So,
we,
as far as calendar time, what we do doesn't make a difference. It's, the action is at the city council.
well, the approval authority is with.
The action, yeah,
yes.
that's where the calendar, we're kind of immune to that as long as
Which-
we're within that boundary.
Though I think we would all agree there's merit to sending it to council with a recommendation for council then to consider
Yeah.
and then to pursue it how they wish. So with that, I would invite a motion that embodies, see if we have a consensus about it. Unless there's further discussion. And then these folks can know they have, what this body's recommendation is, and you can come back to city council on July the, I believe, 11th?
25th, the 11th meeting was canceled due to
25th, so there you go. But first, we need a recommendation, so I'd invite a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Jason,
Okay,
Thank you.
I would make a motion, sorry, go back and read the item. Discussion and action on a preliminary and final replat pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78 subdivision, Section 78-74 replatting without vacating previous plat and associated variances from Section 78-3 dedication of right-of-way by subdividers in Section 78-136 lot, subparagraph C, frontage for Bandera Oak subdivision being a 11.69 acre tract of land establishing lot 7, 8, and 901, block 2, previously platted as lots 3, 4, 5, 6, and 901 out of Bandera Oak subdivision, recorded in volume 9723, page 124, out of the deed and plat records of Bear County, Texas. Recommend approval on the variances to allow the replat of Lot 7 with no direct frontage. The approval of Lot 901 with no additional right-of-way dedication along State Highway 16, and the approval of an ingress,
variable for approval.
variable ingress easement of less than 60 feet, with the recommendation that the lot line of Lot 901 be amended to the previous lot line connecting that lot to the northwest corner, abutting Lot 8 of Cedar Springs subdivision Unit 1.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Second down there from Jeff. What was, say that lot again? Lot
Lot 8.
8 of Cedar Springs. So discussion of the motion. Jason, anything on?
Yeah, I generally don't have any problems with anything they're proposing, but I think that my recollection is similar to the other councilmen, that part of the original approval for this subdivision was that lot 901 would go all the way to that northwest corner to create a buffer from the subdivision, from the residential subdivision to the north. And, you know, it may have just been oversight or got lost. I don't see any ill will here, but that was, I think, the premise in which we approved the previous layout, and I think that we should stick with that.
That was your second, Jeff. Any further?
Concur 100%.
Anyone else? Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Agree with the motion. I think we approved it initially based on how it was explained to us, and yes, this can be done. There's nothing wrong with it legally. I think there's another message in there that I'm not comfortable with seeing on paper, and I think we should keep with the original intent of the buffer, the way it was, we approved it the first time. Like I said before, having said that, legally, this is legal, but I think there's more to it than that. I know you weren't involved in the first time, so not poking at you, but we're kind of a victim of the circumstances here, and I'm not comfortable with that, so.
All right, anybody else? So the motion is, I'll read it back and we'll vote. Motion is to recommend approval of preliminary and final replats pursuant to Code 7874 and associated variances from 78.3 and 78.136 for Bandera Oaks subdivision, an 11.69 acre tract of land establishing lots 7, 8, and 901. Block 2, previously platted as lots 3, 4, 5, 6, and 901 out of the Bandera Oaks subdivision. With the following conditions. One, following variances which were submitted, and this is just to affirm what was requested. Lot 7, that there is no direct frontage access. Lot 901, there's no additional right-of-way dedication, and it allows for variable easement of less than 60 feet. And also for lot 901, this is what this body is recommending be added, that lot 901 be amended to preserve the existing lot line that connects to the northwest corner of the lot, abutting lot 8 of Cedar Springs. All in favor of that motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Joe, did you vote?
I said aye.
So that will now go forward to council on the 25th, and then they'll make the final determination. Well, thank you guys for being here, appreciate it.
Who seconded that?
That was Jeff. Okay. Our next item tonight, number 7, is discussion and direction of the design of the gateway monument signage for the city. This item comes to us from staff. And Ernest and Alex, you guys have seen this at council, so maybe you could speak to it, but.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I
go
will,
ahead.
because Ernest is not familiar with the item. And there were a
Ernest
lot of
thinks-
questions at city council when this came up last week, so I'm going to try to give you a little bit of the answers we got to understand what is this all about.
Yep.
So the Economic Development Corporation, as you know, collects tax money, half-cent per tax, in order to develop the economy of the city of Helotes. They have some latitude and instruction on how to spend those funds, and one of the things that they do have commissioned is a request to put entry signs into the city. So similar to you've seen in other areas, welcome to, or so-and-so welcomes you, or this kind of thing. So they, as you can see from your agenda item, they put out a call for request from a number of reputable sign companies. Only one responded. And that, well, the request was also to have them give us some designs, and we weren't going to pay for those designs. And that may have deterred a few from responding, but I don't know that for sure. So I think Keller Custom Signs, which is a very large company, and also the one that put together the LED sign here in front of City Hall, is the only one responded. They came back with 3 responses. Economic Development Corporation had a chance to give their opinions on these, both from a perspective of design, color, shape, size, etc., before deciding finally on whether to go with the company for one, the design, the cost, etc. So you have within your packet on the bottom of page 1 of 2, the comment, and then at the top of the second page, the comments that were gathered by our city administrator, who is also the executive of the EDC, on their view of these particular proposed signs. Below that, on the second page, you should see a consolidated list of a variety of the comments that were made at the city council meeting last Thursday with regard to those signs as well. So that's kind of the history and the background of it. The final decision hasn't been made as to exactly where they would go, other than they would be at the entryways. They were thinking of 2 of them, one somewhere out Highway 16, not exactly sure how far. The original comment was at the city limits. Somebody said, wow, that's out at the golf driving range. And then others said, well, maybe it shouldn't be quite that far, but it hasn't been decided. Also, it hasn't been decided whether it would be likely on valleys in the middle of the easement of the highway, or whether or not it would be on the side, which of course has an impact on what size you might want, right? And then obviously the second one would be down off of 1560, going towards Shanefield, but again, no specific location has been determined for that. Easement obviously is important because both of those roads are TxDOT. You can see the various different comments that were made. I think that our city administrator is doing his best to gather as much feedback as he can from all of the relative bodies to determine that. The goal is to do our best to comply with our city code of monument signage, right? That it deflects some comments when you say, you don't let me have that, but then you have one. And that was kind of the comment. So I'm guessing either Ernest is going to take really good notes, or our city administrator will be watching this film in order to try to gather your opinion on the signs. Now, let me mention, because there was a lot of differences in opinion on the signs that there are. There are 3 signs in the packet, and there are slight differences, although they look very much the same. Big difference in price. There's A, B, and C. And Ernest, which one is that one?
This is the first one.
So this one here, as you can see, has the lettering below the level of the base.
In front of it also.
Big letters, and stuck out in front of the sign. So the letters are not actually on the sign, but they're metal letters in front of it. And this would be a vinyl cover. The next sign, this one, the lettering is actually on the face of the sign and above it. And the third one, you can see the lettering is above the base, but still stuck out in front and a little bit larger. That's the 3 designs that the sign company presented. Certainly, there's not any requirement that we approve that. All he's looking for is feedback, what you like, what you don't like, what you might recommend, so that he can gather all of it together and go back to the company and say, hey, can you give us a proposal with something different? Or, we love this, etc. So I'm not going to go into the specific comments, you've got them there, but I think it's more a matter of what your opinion is. What would you like to see as you enter the city as a welcome to, whatever? The first, the sign that includes, I may not be the first one, but I believe there's pricing for each of these. And I think the one that has the lettering on the actual face of the sign is the cheapest one, somewhere $6,000-7,000, and the other ones are around $9,000 or $10,000 a piece. So, does that,
That's times 3.
originally, I think two,
Oh, it's 2.
Per sign, the pricing, or is that?
per monument.
Okay,
Question.
all right, let's
So,
open it up.
I just want to give you the background of where this came from and what they're looking to do. Ultimately, the EDC would be the one paying for and installing and making the, I guess, final decision, but the request is to have all of the feedback they can gather to get the most agreeable.
Joe?
I was gonna ask Alex, is there any plan for landscaping around the base?
Well, that could be part of the commentary that we offer, so are you
Yes, we-
in favor of that?
Well, I'm not one, either way, for or against, but since we have a standard,
I believe the initial intent were these to be unlit, but the landscaping would probably depend upon where you place it, and that hasn't been decided.
yeah.
And as with many monuments, if it's in the easement in the middle of the highway easement out on Bandera Road, out there past, San Antonio Ranch, odds are you're not gonna have landscaping. But that'll be determined later based on where and size and everything else.
So that at least is a
But you
question.
can, you can add that to your comment. I'd love this to be, I think the base should be higher so that we could, any number of those things.
Yeah.
So I think that is a consideration to note, is should, the consideration of landscaping is a possibility here. Ron?
Everywhere I've been, it always says welcome to, the city.
Yes.
It's unusual, I have to say, city of Helotes.
Okay, so there's and we're just capturing comments, whether Ernest is noting them down, or staff will pick it up off the recording. So an example, so there would be a suggestion or consideration of welcome, an actual welcome should be
The sign
part of the
company
verbiage.
basically picked up on the emblem
Right,
that you might see on the employees' shirts
Right.
or the hats. That is what our emblem is. So that's what they picked up.
I like the word welcome also.
It's also stated on the city council comments on page 2 that they suggested welcome be on there as
Good.
well. So, and I also wanted to chime in that I think if we're gonna spend this kind of money, that we should really take a chance to promote ourselves. And we do call ourselves the gateway to the Texas Hill Country, and I know that's more words, but I think that should be considered on there. And that's actually also, that was my thought driving in here to the meeting tonight, but it's also on the
Yeah.
city council feedback as well. But I wanted to say also, I'm not sure if this is part of the discussion this evening, but, because it sounds like, and I definitely appreciate Alex every time he's here, he does such a great job catching us up. Kudos to him. But the point about where they're gonna be located, I know that that's not our business, but it just seems to me that when we're welcoming people to Helotes, I would think that I don't know if there's studies that have been done, traffic studies that are done, but it seems like most people when they come into Helotes and they're going towards the hill country, they're coming from San Antonio, and it seems to me that, I know that Bandera's congested and there's all kinds of action going on there, but I don't know if that's consideration for possible signage as well. But if it's gonna be out on 1516, it's gonna be out past San Antonio Ranch, then saying gateway to the hill country doesn't make much sense, because it's coming the other way. So, but I would like to see that, because my background is PR, and I'm a marketing person, and when you're trying to promote our community, I think that's one of our calling cards, is that we are the first impression that you see as you approach the hill country.
okay,
Just my thoughts.
move down the road here.
Oh, and one more thought, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt. I do agree with Joe's comment earlier about considering the landscaping, but of course, only where it's allowed. But with that thought, I wanted to say these where the Helotes is popping out, like the one on the big screen right now. I'm not sure if we have other signs in the city that do that, but it seems to me that this should be our, when a resident comes up to us, and I know they have, I'm sure they have to any one of us on the dais up here, they know what we do, and they say, well, what is a model sign? Well, it should be this one. This should be the model sign of what other businesses, when they come out here, they should say, okay, well, if we can match that, then we know we're in the ballpark and we're doing the right way to create our signs and craft our signs. So we won't see a laundry list of everything they want to do that could cause variances or that is not correct. This should be correct, and I don't know, and I'm open here for the commission to share with me if that is, if that's on other signs in the community. And my thought, I like the cheaper one, because we can get more for the dollar, and also it just looks better. It pops better, and it's uniform with everything we're doing in the city. So I do believe that the cheaper one is more prominent, and it's more cost-effective to our community.
All right, let me move down the road. Jeff, would you like to add anything
I
to what's been
mean,
said?
I just want to say what Mario said was awesome there, is that these signs should be kind of a role model for what other businesses should be maintaining their signs on, so I don't think that the big red, you know, we're always saying, tone it down, keep it down, we don't want to do that. I don't agree with red. I almost think a little bit wider, not quite as high. But yeah, I don't like the Helotes out front. I like it on the sign, all of it above the rock base.
Okay.
I do like the welcome to Helotes. If they did do one on Bandera Road coming in from San Antonio, then I would recommend or like to see the gateway to Texas Hill Country, but otherwise, like you said, it's pointless. But tone down the colors.
You remember the old, date myself here, Burma Shave signs?
No, just
So first the
get rid
welcome
of
one,
that
do a second one that's gateway to the hill
windmill
country.
itself.
Yeah, I was
more
looking
money.
at that's the one at Old Town.
Oh, it's burgundy.
Yeah.
Richard, would you like to add?
I like the less expensive sign because I like, it looks clean. I think it should say welcome. And the color is a little in your face.
Okay, Jason?
Much of the same. I just think the red's too much, and I know that certain chicken restaurants can be very upset if we if we approve this. Yeah, I was just look at the. I was just pulling up on my phone the Old Town Helotes Gateway that we have at that little street that cuts through. I forget the name of this. Yeah. That that kind of burnt color. I think in keeping with our town's development code, I think is. But other than that, I like the suggestion, and I like the cleaner look. I think of the one without it popping off. So.
Ron? Yeah?
Similar things, the red, tone that down. The cheaper sign does look better. And also, making it a little bit wider and a little lower, I think would be more eye-catching. I'm afraid the tall skinny is gonna be missed too easily.
Joe?
Well, I think the cheap one looks a little better. But I
I'm sorry,
think,
say that again?
I think the cheap one looks a little better.
Okay.
But I think the base on it should be more in line with the size of it. If the size was as projected here, the base should be wider, and it should be allowed to have something around it to set off the sign. So maybe a plant or something of that nature. But it need to have a larger base. But that sign doesn't look right sitting on that little base that tall. Look like it might fall over. And so, other than that, I think it looks okay. Maybe tone down the red a little bit.
Mike?
Yeah, I wasn't at first, but everybody's convincing me. I kind of like the cheaper sign. I liked how the white outline offsets the letters. That may change if you change that background color from red to something else. So kind of the concept, I like it. And I agree, maybe a little bit wider would give it do more justice. You know, look a little bit stockier or substantive, if you will. and welcome, obviously, I'd rather see that. Cause the word city and of, they're not balanced symmetrically anyway. But I'll follow my sword over the windmill, cause that means a lot to the hill country and the early way of life. That's what people had. We have a windmill out front, we have a cistern out front. That's Old Town, right? And I think that background, that should be kept. I don't know if anybody disagreed with it or not, but to me, that means a lot.
I agree with you.
So I would just add that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to add one thing. I don't know, this hasn't been mentioned in any other suggestion or anything. I don't know if they planned on, I'm sure it's going to add to the cost of putting anything on the backside, like, thanks for visiting, or have a great day, or
I've seen that before on deals, yeah.
something. I mean, rather than when you're driving away, just seeing a big old blank piece of rock or metal. Just an idea.
Just a general comment, though. My only concern is without really knowing where these are going, I think our hands are tied a little bit. I mean, I can see that, some of these comments are awesome if it's sitting in the middle of the median and Bandera Road, but if it's on the side, maybe it's a little different. It might make sense to be a little more tall if it's on the side. It might make sense to be a little squattier and wider if it's in the middle, in my mind. It's sort of,
Yeah, that's true.
we're just a lot of conjecture, and
I
if we
think
had a little
maybe-
more to work with.
Or the
graphics
base could
and
be
the colors.
adjusted for,
Yeah, and of course, TxDOT may, they may, nope, so.
So location matters.
Yeah.
You can't get too far on
And
design without
I
location.
agree with them now that I think about it, but I think the design, the colors, those types of things, we can still talk to and kind of work with the size once we know more.
But since you've got more than one sign, in one place it may be located in the middle of the road, and the next place may be on the side, so
We don't know.
we'd have to work that in, saying what's appropriate based on
I think
location.
that, I would just add, I agree with most of the comments. I think a more traditional looking monument sign that can be a model, cleaner lines. I personally am not a big fan of the windmill, though it's part of our branding, and if we're gonna have a windmill, for somebody driving 40, if we're lucky, 40 miles per hour on Bandera Road, I should be able to recognize it as a windmill, and I don't know that that does it.
Yeah.
But I agree generally with folks, cleaner, and the red is obviously problematic. But I think the bottom line is we can be a lot more helpful, I think, if we know where it's going.
Yeah.
And I think there's broad consensus here that we want something that really reflects the standards that we ask others to conform to. And that could, I think it's kind of magical thinking on our part, if we think people will actually like listen and follow what we propose, right? In terms of this is what it should look like, but I think it says a lot. This is what we embrace, this is the style we like, this is what represents our community. And if the windmill is part of that, so be it. Same way with the verbiage, gateway may be too much, right, for signage, but it's part of what the city wants to convey, so. I think the other thing to be conveyed is appreciation to the sign company for drafting these, for putting in the time and effort. And I think, end of the day, it's a good process, and I hope they take the feedback. They're getting a lot of feedback constructively, that we all are supportive of what they're doing and appreciative of their efforts, and think something good can come out of this.
I'd like to add also that also appreciation to wherever it started here inside internally.
EDC.
To get these signs. I mean, I don't know if we ever had any since the city started, but if we haven't, this is long overdue.
But keep in mind, we've had the Old Town Helotes signs now for,
I know we've had those, but those are in that
but those are
one
that's much
little
narrower, right?
geographic area.
Right.
in fact, Leon Valley just, was the last year, put up theirs.
But in all fairness, we haven't had much of a city here very long. It's just lately, the past 10 years, grew so much. Before that, it's almost like a one-stop place.
All right, well, I appreciate everybody's efforts tonight. That does bring us to the conclusion of our business. Ron, do you have a motion for us?
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor of the motion to adjourn, signal aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned at 8:10. Thank you all very much.